April Boden here of Aiden's Road to Recovery and Truth or Talk, coming at you live today. I want to do this live video because I want to find out what everybody's having for Thanksgiving dinner. As any of you know, you followed me and you followed Aiden's Recovery or you followed Truth or Talk, that I have a son who's vaccine injured and he has gut dysbiosis, leaky gut. So each year, while I do love Thanksgiving, it's something that requires a lot of preparation. It's like, well, what are we going to have for dinner this year? Like, how are we going to get something that he's going to like and he's going to eat, and so I take usually a few weeks to figure out what's going to be for dinner, how I'm going to get the best price on it, and and then I start preparing, right? So today being Sunday, the day before or the week before, I already started making appetizers and I already started making pie crust. So I was like getting down on it like right away. So anyway, yeah, so I'm thinking, you know, this is something that other people are experiencing too, right? Like we all have to do. I'm inviting some of you guys over because I haven't seen anybody join in yet. But I'm thinking some of you guys have to deal with this as well. So I wanted to see what everybody else is doing and what everybody else has to say, because we've been doing this so when Aiden was diagnosed with autism back in 2009 or 2007 rather, I started my blog in 2009. I went on the diet right away. I read about it. I talked to other moms, and they said, you know, go gluten-free, go casein-free, and so we did that right away. And I remember replacing his dairy with soy, and then was told right away that soy was no good either, which I figured out pretty quickly because he had the same reaction, which was like a runny nose, and started getting sick from soy as he had from the dairy. So I had replaced his yogurt with a non-dairy soy yogurt, and he would just get these runny noses like all the time. So I realized, well, that's no good. And so then after a while, not really any results, started on the Candida diet. I read a book called The Yeast Connection by William Crookes. It's this old book from like the 70s or 80s, but the guy's talking about fungal infections and yeast overgrowth, and that's connection to neurological disorders and so on. Way back then, he was talking about all that. And so he found that when he put people on antifungals and put them on a yeast diet, that they improved. So we started that, which really eliminating a lot of sugar. And then it's just been nonstop since then. Specific carbohydrate diet. We've been on Paleo diet. We've been on, you know, we filed like Rest and Price diet. You know, we've done a lot. Let me just put it that way. And I say everything. I know there's more out there. I haven't done keto yet, like full blown, right? So maybe that's something to look into next. But he still has a lot of allergies. A lot of things come up on his testing. And I think that what a lot of these food bloggers do is that they write a lot of really good recipes and they give a lot of really good advice, but they tend to ignore the elephant in the room, which is the underlying cause of the leaky gut issue, right? The leaky gut issue is caused by the vaccine injury in the first place. So once you get those toxins into the internal organs and you cause all this inflammation, the gut becomes porous, right? It expands like a piece of fabric. So when it gets full and it expands out, it gets these little holes in it, too much, right? And this is just my layman's way of explaining it. So then those food particles that are normal foods get into the bloodstream, and then the person has an antibody response to it and treats it like a toxin. So it's like normal food treated like a toxin. So this year we're doing basically paleo, GAPS. I've kind of just gotten to the point where I've combined the two, all of the best ones, and made it just sort of what have you. So we do a little bit of dairy, like on the GAPS diet. I do the fermented yogurt. I make my own yogurt, and the fermented vegetables and everything. I use Pickle-It, which is an airtight version of the mason jars, so that you don't let any air, any oxygen that can produce bad bacteria in it. And that's really important. And I'm doing no grain. basically just fruits, vegetables, cauliflower. I put our recipe, all of the recipes that I'm going to be following, on the list of our Thanksgiving menu. But the thing that I want to know from everybody is, why is his gut still messed up? What are you guys doing, if you're doing anything that's helpful? Because over the years, I've seen that my son has become kind of, I don't know, addicted to food. Like, he gets really emotional around food, almost like he has an eating disorder. And I'm wondering, in that, like, gets hyper, like wanting to eat. And I know leaky gut has some influence on food addiction. You become addicted to the things that bother you the most. But our diet's so clean, I can't figure out what that is that's really bothering you. And incorporating the fermented foods and doing all that kind of stuff. So we're still dealing with a lot of dysbiosis in the gut and a lot of problems. So that's why I wanted to come on live, because I was hoping to get a chat going. I haven't so far. No one's really made any comments, but that was what I was kind of hoping that someone would say is what they've been doing that might be beneficial. So I know that a lot of people do rotation diets, which is where you move food around. We've done all that too. And what is the best diet for you guys? If you've tried Body Ecology, if you've tried, specific carbohydrate diet. So what are the differences? And when people ask me, like, what's the best autism diet, my answer to that is whatever is going to work with your family, whichever is the healthy diet that's going to work with your family and that you're going to stick to. Because that's once you get that crux, that's the big problem. That's the hard part to get past. It's just something that you're going to be able to stick to and that you're not going to cheat on a lot, right? So are you able to eat potatoes? Are you able to eat starch? Are you able to eat any grain? These are the kind of things that I want to see people talk about. And I remember having a conversation with my friend Liam Chef, who passed away last April. And he had always been a big proponent of macrobiotics, and he'd been a vegan for many years and a vegetarian for many years. And macrobiotics is like traditional Chinese medicine, is that food is energy. And so, which it is, but you take in the energy that you consume. So like fruits and vegetables tends to be like yin, and which is healing, whereas meats and salty and heavy fats and things like that tend to be yang, which is more on the grounding side, but it's like getting things done. It's energy in the sense of getting things done. And so he was always kind of into this whole, like, how is everybody just going on the paleo diet or all these kinds of things where they're just like consuming copious amounts of meat and like, what the hell is going on? And I remember him asking me, at the end he was saying, I'm kind of confused about what is good or what is bad anymore. Like, I don't really know, because everybody's saying all these grains are bad and soy is bad and all these things that in the macrobiotics was supposed to be more neutral energy. And I said, well, because nobody really gets the big problem, which is the fact that it's not that the food is necessarily inherently bad in and of itself. It's that people have a leaky gut. People are sick. They're really, really sick. And so that is where you start. So when you start with sickness, when you start from a place of sickness, then you are going to develop allergies. And grains, because they're complex carbohydrates, because they are more difficult to break down, tend to be more offenders. Because if you look at it like, if you have a broken leg, well, it's going to take a lot longer to heal if you keep walking on it, right? So you got to like stop, you got to rest it. And so when you remove the complex carbohydrates, you remove the things that are more difficult to break down, then you're kind of resting the gut. And that's helping. But again, we've been at this for a long time, and 10 years or so, and my son's still having issues. Now, it's possible that we've prevented. I always tell people when they want to know, oh, do those diets work? Do they really help kids with autism? And the misconception is that these are autism diets, right? I remember my son, when he was still in school before I started homeschooling him, that we were dealing with the teachers, and they were kind of giving me shit, like, oh, you know, just like, oh, is it okay if he has ice cream? Is there, you know, and I'd be like, what? I've been telling you guys, like, you can't have sugar, you can't have dairy, you can't have all this stuff. And they'd be like, oh, well, can you just have a little microwave popcorn, you know, if we take the butter off? And I'm like, what? Like, they just aren't, you know, paying attention. And his first, and I will say, his teachers up through 3rd grade were really great about it. And they would always tell me, like, if something happened, he, you know, oh, he grabbed an M&M today, or he did something. And then, but when he was in 4th and 5th grade, he had these teachers who just kind of wrote it off, you know what I mean? Like, they acted like it was, oh, she just read Jenny McCarthy's book and she's putting him on a diet, you know? And that's what I think a lot of these people tend to think. They don't recognize that it isn't supposed to be a cure for autism. It is supposed to be a cure, or it's supposed to help with the leaky gut issue. And some of these other behaviors that we call autism are the side effects of the damage that's been caused in the gut and in the brain. These damaged neurotransmitters, these damaged genetics, these mutations, and the way things are, the enzymes aren't producing the way that they're supposed to, or being produced in the way that they're supposed to. And so this is what this is treating. So by getting it on a healthy diet and getting some of these, cleaning up these things, I never saw really a downside. I couldn't really understand why people were so against it. Like, it was this, you know, what's the big deal? Like, why wouldn't you want a child to be as healthy as possible in order for them to learn? What are they going to learn if they're sick all the time, and they're dealing with migraines, and they're dealing with all this, you know, fibromyalgia, like joint pain and things like that, and then they can't talk, right? So then you're on top of that, they don't know how to tell you when they're sick. They don't know how to express that. And so they're just kind of, then you're going to do what? Spike behaviors. You're going to have all these problems. And so allergy seasons was something that we would see a spike in behaviors, you know, in the spring months, when that'd be right around the month of April, we'd have all these allergy issues. So, I mean, it was clear that it was biological, that there was something going on internally, but they don't see it that way. So anyway, so one day he came home from school with like Cheez-Its in his backpack, and I thought, Cheez-Its, like gluten and dairy, like those are the 2 worst things, and who knows what else is in them? I don't even know. But I said, well, what is he doing with this? Because I had actually been asking them whether or not he was getting anything at school, because they had, he was constantly coming home with stomach aches. And so I said, you know, is he getting anything, and is he having any infractions at school? And they had absolute denial. Absolute denial. And his previous teachers would always tell me if something happened, like, we want you to know that he grabbed some food off of another kid's plate today, and in case he has a reaction, let us know. But then when he was in the 4th and the 5th grade, and he had these other teachers, they were like, absolute denial. Nothing's ever happened in front of us, never. And so it's like, I knew right then and there, if you have pure denial, I mean, come on, I know he's quick, you know what I mean? He'll see an M&M or something on the floor, he'll pick it up and eat it, like that. So don't tell me that it's never happened. And then he comes home with a bag of Cheez-Its, right? And so I said, well, why does he have Cheez-Its in his backpack if he's not having these infractions, and he's coming home with all these pains in his gut, and he can't do his other work once he gets home? And they said, oh, no, you know, he's coming to school like that. I said, why are you guys telling me that he's sick then? You know, it was just, you know what I mean? It was just like really annoying. So eventually I had to do all the research. I had to lay down what leaky gut was and explain what his disorder was, and so that they would understand that this isn't just like a Jenny McCarthy's diet that she did to secure her son. It's like, that's what people think, you know. And if you read her book, she did a lot more than that. That's just the misconception. That's the stereotype, right? That this is like the autism diet. So he at the time was on the GAPS diet, and the GAPS diet is basically the specific carbohydrate diet, or the SCD, revamped. So Natasha McBride, who wrote the book about the GAPS diet, she was a neurologist, and she had a vaccine-injured son who became autistic, and she didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so she had seen some dietary interventions that had been helpful with people with neurological disorders, many neurological disorders, been outright cures for people with schizophrenia and celiac disease and so on. And she did some research into it, and she discovered the SCD, the specific carbohydrate diet, which had been popularized by Elaine Gottschall in her book, Breaking the Vicious Cycle. And so she took that, and then she took also some work from Weston Price and figured out how to not just take away the grains and the disaccharides and the polysaccharides, which are the complex sugars, but to also make sure that the food was whole and natural and organic as possible and non-toxic as possible. And then she also took some of the work of Donna Gates from the Body Ecology diet and brought in the fermentations and everything. But a lot of these bloggers who talk about the importance of ferments don't talk about the importance of making it oxygen-free and air-free. So, you know, that's what you can actually really be countering yourself. And I know a lot of people who have really bad reactions to fermentation. We've had luck with that. We haven't had bad reactions to fermentation, but a lot of people do. And that's an intolerance to histamine, which is if you have, you know, a lot of these responses are normal immune system responses, but they aren't inflammation and histamine and these things that happen. They're a result of, like, you've had a toxic injury, you've had a toxic assault, and then now your body's responding. But then the immune response is like too much. Then that becomes overwhelming to the system because it doesn't know how to dial it down, because it's always in a constant state of healing, because it's never really completely gotten over the vaccine damage. So anyway, so that's my rant on that. So I'm hoping I wrote a couple articles about food and stuff before. You know, I had an idea, like if I can ever get my shit together and write a book, I want to I had an idea to write a chapter on food, and it would be called Food, Love, and Autism, Just Kill Me Now, you know, or Just Go Fuck Yourself. Like, it was just like something, because it's been the bane of my existence trying to figure out what to feed my son. And, you know, and to not make him feel like he's not, like he's left out, or like he can't, I don't know, just enjoy the way that other kids do. And then that feeling of being left out is what makes the kids feel left out, right? And then they feel like they feel like they're not being treated fairly, and may end up becoming more addicted to those foods than other kids, because now it's always been restricted. So anyway, so it's one of those things I've had to struggle with. So let's see, what's on our menu? I'm going to just go ahead. I haven't gotten a lot of comments here, so I'm going to go ahead and just talk about what we're going to be having for Thanksgiving dinner. And if you want, you can post that later. Let me know what you're eating. But I put it in the description. We're going to have bacon wrapped dates, prosciutto wrapped apples or pears, stuffed mushrooms. This is the stuffed mushroom is not a paleo or GABS thing. It's like just an old Anderson tradition. That's my maiden name. And now it's become a Boden tradition. And my husband wants me to have it every year. So I do. I make that for him every year. And then fruit with seasoning dip. I haven't tried this one, so I put the seasoning dip, deviled eggs. I make my own mayonnaise, and that's what I make the deviled eggs with. So very easy to do. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, or yams. I got both, actually. Cranberry, cauliflower stuffing. Put a recipe to that. Haven't tried that yet. Paleo cornbread, Brussels sprouts, and a pear pomegranate spinach salad. Sounds good, right? And then turkey, pumpkin pie, crustless. I did an experiment a while back where I made pies for 10 with no grain. So I used almond flour, but we're not using nuts anymore. So we're sans nuts right now. So that's fun. So I'm using coconut flour instead. So that's what I have on there. Apple pie. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. Maybe some coconut ice cream. So let me know what you guys are having for dinner. And I'm going to probably be taking another break off of Facebook and spending time with my family. So this is probably the last video I'll put up. Until next time that I see you guys, peace, truth, and love. Please visit Aiden's Recovery and visit Truth or Talk. Put some money in our Patreon, or put some money into Aiden's fundraiser. We'd really like to get to the Sunrise program again, or to the RPM clinic, and do some more cool stuff. But you know, like and share. I appreciate all the love, and I appreciate some advice. Tell me what you guys are eating. That's what I really want to know. So all right, thanks. Till next time. Peace and love you.